Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where I shake my brain nipples every day so I can earn money to provide you a free education. Remember, SiliconDojo.com is back. We are doing our first class in a while in Durham, North Carolina next week. We're going to be doing a class on how to build little AI platforms, AI apps using Olam or Python, SQLite, the Bottle web app framework, using REST APIs, and some other cool stuff. We're going to spend about 3 or 4 hours showing you how to build a simple but full-fledged AI application so you start getting the concept of what the fuck artificial intelligence actually is, and you understand why I keep putting the double quotes around whenever I talk about AI. So anyways, that's why I'm here today, and hallelujah! Can we all pray? Can we all praise that the technology world has remembered the concept of resource constraints again? Yay! I think this is an interesting thing when you look at artificial intelligence and AI, the amount of money these companies and organizations are throwing around, and the idea that they basically should have a limitless amount of money, right? Whenever I'm doing a technology project, the big question is what are my resources, right? What are your requirements? What is my time frame, that type of thing, and what resources are you providing me? If you provide me $1,000, I will build you $1,000 solution. I will create a solution for $1,000. Gonna be a lot of duct tape there, but I can do it. You give me $100,000, well, then I can actually probably make something that, will work, 9 times out of 10, right? But that's one of the big things, right? How much money do I have? One of the curious things in the artificial intelligence realm is nobody has given a fuck, right? You look at Sam Altman. Sam Altman wants to spend $4 trillion on CapEx expenses to build out AI data center. What? Right? Like in the next year or so, he wants to only spend $850 billion. And what we've seen with so much of this artificial intelligence horse crap is just so much money just being thrown at it. And it's interesting that so little thought, it seems, has gone into simply the concept of resource constraints. Hey, what if we don't have unlimited money? What could we build for only a crap ton of money? Hey, let's not do unlimited money and just say crap ton. Hey, for a crap ton of money, what can we do? And so this is what I think is interesting. This article today and another article I'm going to talk about is with DeepSeek, coming from the China man. They've come up with a sparse attention model. And I think this is interesting. Coming from TechCrunch, DeepSeek releases sparse attention model that cuts API costs in half. And it's basically what this is, and I think it's curious, right, is we've seen these larger and larger context windows. And this is a concerning thing, right? If you're going to deploy AI into the real world, these context windows are a fucking disaster waiting to happen. So when I started doing these classes using OpenAI API, the curious thing is the context window was only 4,000 tokens. So the context window was context window, total token usage. Anyways, let's say 4,000. 4,000 tokens. So 1,000 tokens is about 750 words. So 4,000 tokens is about 3,000 words, right? And so basically that's the most you could pump into the model. And so one of the things I showed folks in the past is that's why, like, if you wanted to do web scraping in Python, you want to use a module such as Beautiful Soup. So you can only scrape the text you actually need to send that to the model. Because if you just take the entire web page, right? So you can actually just do a get the entire web page, and theoretically send that to the LLM. But one of the things you're not thinking about is all of the HTML, all of the CSS, all of the JavaScript. What you find out is a pretty simple web page, like a web page that looks like this. When you actually start looking at the amount of text, the text that you don't see, again, JavaScript, CSS, all that kind of horse crap, right? You start getting a hell of a lot of text in there. And so the interesting thing is previously, if you try to send all of that text, it would fail out just because the context, it was too big for the context window. And so you had to limit the amount of data going to the context window so you could actually make the damn thing work. The interesting thing is once you start having a context window of 1 million tokens, guess what, boys and girls? people can start grabbing entire web pages, including the CSS and JavaScript and everything else, and just send that shit because it works to OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever else. Which basically then means you're paying the token cost for sending just a tremendous amount of garbage information. Right? One of the reasons why we've got to think about how we design these systems. When I talk about architecture, these are the types of things I talk about why architecture is important. And so the other thing too is with these massive context windows is people can send more and more information to the models. And the problem is, again, those context windows start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like you talk about this with a fraction of a cent, right? It takes a fraction of a cent to get a response. Let's say it takes a tenth of a penny. Let's say it takes a tenth of a penny to get a response. Right, well, the issue is, right, for you in a lab environment, a test environment, education environment, a tenth of a penny, right, you throw $10 into your OpenAI account, motherfucker, you will be using that $10 for the next 5 years, right? Doesn't matter. Right? But you go into a production environment. And think about what a production environment is, right? So you take that whatever little AI project that you created and you put it into, let's say, a 10-person office environment so that people can ask questions about your systems or whatever in a 10-person office environment. Again, a tenth of a penny, you're now actually starting to burn through a little bit of money, but your bill's probably gonna be like $3-4 a month. Who the fuck cares, right? Here's the thing. What if you take that same app, same concept of an app, and you throw it up on the web, and you allow everybody in the world to access it? So at production, at scale, all of a sudden, a tenth of a penny times 1,000 responses per minute. Oh, shit. That gets kind of expensive, right? And so one of the big questions out there is how to reduce cost, right? As it becomes easier for programmers to increase the cost for getting responses back, how can you have the systems try to decrease the cost again? And so with DeepSeek, with a sparse attention, the way that I read it is essentially as if the model can skim read. So if you ever skim read, so I don't skim read a lot anymore because normally I'm just reading normal books. But like when I'm doing technical reading, so I'm doing technical reading for certifications or back when I was in college, right? Skim reading, right? They give you this whole textbook, a lot of it's fluff. 90% of it's fluff. You just care about important things. So you open it up and what you're doing is you're skimming through looking for specific names or places or dates or whatever else. And then whenever you click, whenever you see something that's important, you will then read a sentence before and a sentence after, and right, you can skim read through. So what appears with a sparse attention model is it's essentially a model that is now going to skim read the context that is coming in so that it can pull out only the appropriate tokens that are required to actually be able to answer the response. And I think this is very interesting. The other thing with this I find it kind of curious is this whole question about how many resources do we actually need when AI matures? Like one of the big problems now with $4 trillion for OpenAI's CapEx expenses or everything that XAI is doing in Anthropic, right? They're spending so much money in data centers, right? Meta is trying to build a data center like the fucking size of Manhattan. That's not a joke. That's not an Onion article. They're literally trying to build a data center like the size of Manhattan. And one of my questions with this is, are we moving so quickly to build AI infrastructure that we're designing our infrastructure based off of exceedingly immature technology? And so what happens if we just give it a year or two? And when I say this, I'm not saying what happens if we give it 20 years? Eli, you want them to wait 20 years? No, I'm not even saying wait 20 years. I was like, what if they fucking wait like 8 months, 9 months, 1 year? I think a curious thing we might find is that they're going to be figuring out how to just build from an architecture situation these systems better to simply require a hell of a lot fewer resources. So anyways, from this article, researchers at DeepSeek on Monday released a new experimental model called V3.2 designed to have dramatically lower inference costs when used in long context operations. DeepSeek announced the model with a post on Hugging Face, also posting a linked academic paper on GitHub. The most important feature of the new model is called DeepSeek Sparse Attention. In essence, the system uses a module called a lightning indexer to prioritize specific excerpts from the context window. After that, a separate system called a fine-grained token selection system chooses specific tokens from within those excerpts to load into the module's limited attention window. Taken together, they allow the sparse attention models to operate over long portions of context with comparatively small server loads. For long context operations, the benefits of the system are significant. Preliminary testing by DeepSeek found that the price of simple API call could be reduced by as much as half in long context situations. Further testing will be required to build a more robust assessment, but because the model is open weight and freely available in Hugging Face, it won't be long before third-party tests can assess the claims. DeepSeek's new model is one of a string of recent breakthroughs tackling the problem of inference costs, essentially the server cost of operating a pre-trained AI model as distinct from the cost of training it. In DeepSeek's case, the researchers were looking for ways to make a fundamental transformer architecture operate more efficiently and finding that there are significant improvements to be made. So I think this is going to be an interesting thing going forward, and seeing what happens as companies and as researchers start narrowing down on trying to figure out how to use artificial intelligence to solve problems and do it in a resource-constrained fashion, right? This is one of the big things I've been talking about lately with my love of the Pi model. So Microsoft has a Pi model, PHI. I think it was 3. I think it's now 3.5. It's a 2 billion parameter model. And one of the things I talk about, like with these LLMs, the whole question is, what are you solving for? What problem are you trying to solve for? Do you need a frontier model, right? So there's all these frontier models, right? Claude has a frontier, or Anthropic has a frontier model, and OpenAI has a frontier model, and Mistral, and all these, right? And then they do fancy, wow, they're frontier models. Here's the thing, as an IT person, I don't need the best. I don't need the best. I don't, right? I need what's required in order to solve the problem. I think about this with Martin Lehner. So Martin Lehner is a friend of the show. We've done numerous interviews with him, fireside chats with him. And he runs an MSP, managed service providing company, up in the Yukon Territory in Canada. And one of the things we were talking about years ago at this point, was he was using NUCs, so Next Unit Computes. These are from Intel. They were from Intel. One of the things that Intel sold. Fuck Intel. Anyways, one of the really cool things that Intel was doing, and they failed at, so they sold it off to like ASUS or something, anyways, were these NUCs, right? And they were really small form factor computers. Actually, I have one back there, but anyways. They're like this big, right? And at the time, you could have an i7 processor, an i9 processor in it. You could have like 32 gigs of RAM. So basically, it was like a full-fledged computer that's kind of small. Basically, it's about twice the volume of, let's say, an Apple TV. And so you could have a pretty powerful computer that's that big. Now, to be clear, you don't want to use it for gaming or whatever else, but if you just need a good desktop system, it was fine. The interesting thing, Martin Lehner was talking about this, and again, probably 7-8 years ago at this point, is he actually started deploying those as full-fledged servers for his customers, right? So he has customers, a 10-person office, a 20-person office, they're running Active Directory or Exchange or whatever else. The reality for Active Directory and Exchange, right, the resource requirements really haven't changed for about the past 15 years. And so what he realized is like he didn't need to buy some Xeon server with SCSI drives and a RAID array and all that horse crap in order to provide Active Directory services and email. One of these NUCs was fucking fine. Right, he bought like the basic NUCs for like $300-400. He added a couple of components to make it a little bit better. He shoved that into the company's wiring closet or whatever else, and it was great. You have a little computer that does everything that needs to be done. Again, think about this: a 20-person office using a fucking NUC or a nuke or whatever the fuck you call them as their server, right? Oh, that's ridiculous. Why? Why? They're solid, they're stable, they're incredibly good. They were good. Intel did a good job. Intel did a good job and then failed. Anyways, they're really fucking good They were good, solid hardware. And again, a server actually requires a lot fewer resources than the normal desktop computers anymore. So that's why the NUC made a lot of sense. And that's one of the things I'm looking at with a lot of this AI stuff that's coming out. Is everybody's focused on these frontier models, right? These frontier models and this model and that model and the other fucking model, right? I'm looking at what model solves my problem. What model solves my problem for the lowest resource consumption? That's what I care about. And that's where, again, you start looking at these smaller models, you look at some of this stuff, and I think it actually solves people's problems better, which is one of the reasons I get concerned about this whole AI bubble going on. And so what's curious here is, again, you have DeepSeek, and they're starting to design things, again, from that resource-constrained environment. This is one of the reasons I get worried about the competition between the United States and China, right? I talked about this before with Huawei, where I remember seeing Huawei for the first time at Interop New York. So there used to be a conference called Interop. They had one version in New York. It was great. It's gone, but it was great. Anyways, and Huawei was there. And I was trying to figure out why the fuck anybody would buy Huawei equipment, right? You got Cisco, why would you buy Huawei? Well, the thing was with Huawei equipment was basically sealed. A lot of the equipment that they were selling was sealed, was environmentally sealed. And the reason is when you're selling into India, when you're selling into Cambodia, when you're selling into Africa, you cannot assume that your networking equipment is going to go into an entirely clean environment, right? Cisco equipment is fine, but it's a little fucking vacuum cleaner, right? You buy Cisco equipment, you build your little server room, you put an air filter, it probably has its own dedicated air conditioning unit, right? You got all kinds of stuff going on there, right? So you install the Cisco equipment into a clean environment, and it's fine, right? Here's the issue. You install a piece of Cisco equipment into many other environments around the world, it's a little vacuum cleaner. I talked about that with India, right? A lot of places in India, like their dirt, it's like talcum powder. It's just some weird shit. It's just like I talk about, like I woke up one morning, I was somewhere, and I was looking at it, beautiful. Like the sun was rising, and there's just this fucking amazingly beautiful mountain range. It's like, wow, like this is why you come to India. I'm sitting there in my little chai, looking at this beautiful mountain range. It was like 5:30 in the morning. Anyways, I go to take a bucket bath, come back, it's like 6:30 in the morning. The traffic has started, the trucks have started, the whole 9 yards. Motherfucker, you couldn't see across the street. You couldn't see across the street, right? Because as soon as the cars start moving, that I don't even want to call it dirt, that shit just gets into the air and you can't see shit. So imagine Cisco equipment. Again, you have a low vacuum cleaner sucking that in. How long is Cisco gonna last for? So Huawei, one of the reasons that Huawei has been able to be as successful as they have is because they've designed and they've built much of their equipment for the other 90% of the world, right? The other percent of the world that needs communications infrastructure, needs technology infrastructure, but it's not clean based off of an American or a Western standard. Where I get concerned here with DeepSeek is, again, you look at the senility of Sam Altman. You look at the batshit craziness of Elon Musk. You look at how much money is being dumped into our AI systems here with the idea of money doesn't fucking matter. If you have to ask what the price is, you can't fucking afford it, right? Here's the thing. Think about if the Chinese mentality, Huawei and Alibaba and DeepSeek is, okay, we know many people around the world want the AI functionality, but they're resource constrained. They don't have unlimited bucks. So what if we start building? What if we start designing our systems for the other 90% of the world that has resource constraints? Who do you think is gonna win that fucking fight at the end of the day? As an American, I would say I think China is gonna win that fight, which is why I keep screaming so much about this whole, AI war between the U.S. and China, and how we are just screwing the pooch so bad. So anyways, I think this is interesting. The idea of DeepSeek coming up with a model, a sparse attention model that's essentially going through, it's skim reading the context that's going in to pick out what is actually important in order to dramatically decrease API costs by half. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the futures of models and architectures in the AI world? Do you think more and more people are going to be focused on, again, resource constraints versus unlimited pocketbook type of building things? What do you think about this for all of the AI infrastructures being built in the United States? Trillions of dollars, so supposedly, of these systems. And are we building for the future based off of an exceedingly immature way of conceiving this technology, which will only lead to a Manhattan-sized data center that doesn't need to get used here? And what do you think? What do you think about, again, the concept of what if China is building for the 90% of the world and America is building for 10% of the world? Who do you think is going to win the war at the end of that one? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. If you hate these videos, give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing, call me a moron. Just do it like a real Lutnick down there in the comment section. Anyways, remember, a Silicon Dojo exists, silicondojo.com. You go there, you can become a member. We have an in-person AI class coming up actually next week on Olama and models and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you can go in person, it's an in-person class. Sign up for it, and I'll see you there. With that, see y'all later.